process and cost. There's tons of PR visas, hey, and I would not be able to go through them all with you today in a live. There is more than one pathway. If you are a New Zealand citizen, then you know, probably the most common pathways are either a partner visa, if you're a partner of someone who's eligible to sponsor you. You may be eligible for the resident return visa if you came to Australia at all before 1st of September 1994, under certain conditions. So not all New Zealanders can qualify for a permanent residency pathway that way. The costs are different, the processes are different, the timeframes are different, the criteria is different for all of them. So it's not possible for me to be able to run through. It is just too many. So I can't, sorry. Yeah, okay, New Zealand citizen. Yeah, so those are the main ones. And then there's also this one called the 189 visa. It's a skilled independent visa. It's been closed at the moment as of December last month. Oh gosh, what date? Yeah, 27th today. It was still last month, December. And it reopens on the 1st of July. So normally the criteria for that particular visa used to be you had to earn minimum of 53,900 taxable income for 3 years in the last 5 years. You had to be living here before February the 19th, 2016. And you also had to be resident for at least 5 years. And yeah, there was a few other fiddly bits around that. That particular visa varies in cost depending on your family dynamics, but for an individual, you're looking at about, I can't remember the exact figure, but it's roughly around 3,000 to 4,500 roughly for the visa cost itself. If you've got family members being included, anyone who's 18 and above is half that price, and anyone who is under 18 is half that price again. So let's say it was 4,000. The additional applicants are 2,000 that are 18 and over, and the ones that are under 18 are $1,000. And then there's changes with the way the visa's paid for. So the department with that 189, they split the payment. So there's two what we call visa application charges. At the beginning, you pay 20% of that total cost. So if it's 20% of the $4,000, you're looking at about $800 that you pay at the beginning, and then you don't pay the difference until the department have finalised your application and they have approved it. So that doesn't mean they've granted the visa gets granted once you've paid that other 80%. So that particular visa reopens in July. We don't know if there's going to be new costs. Normally visas and citizenship sometimes increase on the 1st of July every year. It just they normally just increase slightly by $20, maybe $10-20, but sometimes they can take huge jumps. Like I can't remember what year it was about 2015, I reckon, and this was a curveball one, but partner visas used to cost about $3,500, and I remember on the 1st of January, can't remember, I think it was 15, they doubled it. It wasn't even 1st of July. So normally it's 1st of July, but they went and doubled the price of a partner visa, no forewarning whatsoever. So yeah, that doesn't happen often, but yeah, it was a situation. And also I had a situation where child visas, so I sponsored one of my children back in, oh gosh, I was trying to work this out this morning, 7 years ago, whatever that was. And I sponsored her on a child visa, and at that time, I think there were about 3,400 for the visa. And then, of course, not long after I lodged the visa application and paid for that, the department turned around and dropped the price by $1,000. So I've never seen that happen before. And I don't know, hopefully that happens for the New Zealand visas, where the government have said that they're going to look at further changes across the board. So we're waiting for more announcements we're expecting Anzac Day to be the day that they're going to make those announcements. They told us that that was what's going to happen, but they said that back in July last year, and then in December last month, they made all these announcements out of the blue that we didn't expect. So who knows? We're just keeping an eye every day on what's going on and what the latest news is. And that's the thing with immigration, it changes constantly. So as a migration agent, you know, what we know and what we provide advice for today could be different tomorrow or next week or next month. So it's always important that whenever you start or embark on your immigration journey, whether it's to do with your visas or if you're at the citizenship stage, that you're always you're one step ahead and you've got yourself properly informed of what's happening in that moment, because what people might have said they did back then, whenever back then was, could be different for you. It doesn't stay the same. In fact, it's the most amended law in Australia. Okay, so all good. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. So if you're watching this and we're live, feel free to pop your questions in. I'm just looking down at my phone, picking up any questions and things as people go through. So I'm scrolling up and down. Sometimes I don't put it in the right order of that. Okay, all right. Now, lots of things I can talk about. So I'm going to just touch on a variety of topics that probably I would say are some of the common ones that we're seeing at the moment. So I've written myself a little list so I don't have to use my memory. As you know, when you're doing a live video, we don't go back, cut and edit and then put in the good bits. Unfortunately, you have to listen to all the guff bits in between. So I'll try and stick to the point. So yes, 189 visa grants. We congratulations to people all around the country that have been granted this visa. This has, in the last week and a half, we have had so many of these visas granted, so many. And it's been wonderful, but it's been hard even keeping up notifying people. So, and I see that people from around the country have been getting their 189s granted, so that's great. Fantastic news. And for a lot of people, if they are eligible to apply for citizenship and they lodge it, they might be Australian or dual citizens, I say, by Christmas this year. That would be amazing. I just also want to remind people on a weekly basis to be mindful and careful of illegal operators. Now, when I talk about illegal operators, I'm talking about people who are providing assistance and or giving advice, which is still providing assistance, and they are not registered migration agents or they are not immigration lawyers. The reason being is that it's a federal offence, and there are, sad to say, people amongst our communities, and when I say our communities, I'm talking about the Pacific Island community in particular, they are operating illegally. They are making out that they are migration consultants. They are lodging visa applications on people's behalf, on their clients' behalf. They're charging fees, and that is highly illegal. So if you know anyone that's doing that, you need to report them to Border Force. So go to the Department of Home Affairs website. We do. And for those people that might be watching this, you need to be careful. And the reason I'm pretty staunch on this is because we've had to pick up the pieces of some of those people's shoddy work. And not only that, they're playing God with people's lives. Also, they are not looking out for their clients' best interests, because a lot of the work that they're doing is what's easy for them, but not best for their client. And so they're doing things like lodging protection visas that are not genuine protection visas. Protection visas are set aside for people who have a genuine fear of returning to their home country. They can provide evidence. It's truthful. It can be researched. They're not just making up some excuse why they can't go back to their home country because they want to stay in Australia. That is not good to do stuff like that. And plus you're clogging up the system, making it harder for those that do have the genuine need. So they're kind of like queue jumpers, and people, those visas are free to apply for, but these illegal operators are charging thousands in fees. They're not registered, they're not trained. Some of them have even worked for migration agents and immigration lawyers, which is shame on them, they should know better. So I'm really hoha, that means I'm really annoyed at seeing these cases, and we're seeing more and more and more come to light. And the other thing that they're applying for is bridging visa E's. Now, if you don't need to apply for a bridging visa E, you should not be applying for a bridging visa E. And the problem is that a lot of our community don't understand how immigration works. They're getting referred to these people, often by their own networks or families, who don't know the difference. And so one of the things Kathleen and I have been harping on about is the difference between what a registered migration agent is and what an illegal operator is. So if people say that they are operating legitimately, if they're providing immigration assistance and they're not an immigration lawyer, they need to have what's called a MARN number, M-A-R-N, which is basically a registration number for migration agents. And you can check their MARN number out on the Department of Home Affairs website through the what's called the OMARA. They're the office of the they're the authority. I always forget what their whole acronym. Aussies like their acronyms. Anyway, you can check them out, and I'll put a link in. If you go to our website, you can click on our MARN numbers, and it'll take you to the department's website. It'll have all of our details there. That's how you can tell someone is legitimate to someone who's not. So there's a few in Sydney that we know about, well, probably about 3 that we know about, and there's probably more, but just be careful. And if you see this, hear this, pass it on, because these people are playing, like I say, God with people's lives, and it's not their place to do that. They're not the ones that have to live with the consequences of their dodgy work, and you don't ever want to get into trouble with immigration. Immigration is taken incredibly seriously. I say that, the last thing you ever want to do is get into trouble with immigration, because immigration is the foundation on which you can stay in Australia. And imagine if that got ripped out from under your feet. And by going to illegal operators, you are risking something really terrible going wrong. So anyway, that's my little harp about that stuff, because that's just not good. What else is on my list? Citizenship. Well, we've kind of touched on citizenship a little bit, but here's some information about citizenship, just general information that might help you. So when applying for Australian citizenship, for those people that might not be sure, you have to be recognised as a permanent resident first. The problem with us as New Zealand citizens is we can live in Australia permanently, therefore have the notion that we are permanent residents. But when it comes to the law and how the law works and getting approved and meeting criteria, you have to be recognised as a permanent resident under certain laws. So you've got the Migration Act and you've got the Citizenship Act. And it gets confusing for New Zealanders because generally New Zealanders are temporary residents, but some New Zealanders are temporary residents under the Migration Act and permanent residents under the Citizenship Act. So those New Zealanders can apply directly for citizenship without needing a permanent visa first. And those New Zealanders are also known as protected SCV holders or eligible New Zealand citizens. Problem with the eligible New Zealand citizen title is that New Zealanders can sometimes think that, oh, because I live in Australia permanently, that must mean I'm eligible. It's not a good label because it just, I think in everyday English, it means the meaning is too broad, and it doesn't actually mean what it sounds like under the law. So you've got New Zealand citizens that are temporary residents normally under the Migration Act, and they're also temporary residents under the Citizenship Act. So those are the New Zealanders that came in generally after the 26th of February 2001, or don't meet the transitional customer requirements, which is for those that came in the first 3 months of that law change. There is a little grey area there where they could possibly be assessed as eligible New Zealand citizens or protected SCV holders. And then for the rest of us that come in after that time, we are temporary residents for life. We have to apply for a permanent visa, and then once we've got our permanent visa, we can then go on to citizenship. So normally you get your permanent visa. If you qualify for any of them, you wait for that to be granted. Generally, we used to wait 12 months, and a lot of us still do. So if you have any other permanent visa, like a partner visa or an RRV, for example, you still have to wait 12 months at this time. But if you've been granted the 189, you can apply for citizenship without waiting for the 12 months. And like I said before, so long as you meet the other residency requirements, then you're good to go. All right, so I mentioned something called a bridging visa E. Now, for those people out there, as a New Zealander coming to live in Australia, I didn't understand a lot of immigration stuff. And I think this goes for a lot of us, because we don't actually have to go through an immigration process, or not one that we're aware of anyway, when we come into Australia. So we don't, it's not, it doesn't come automatically or naturally to us to discuss things like bridging visas or visa applications or permanent visas versus temporary visas. All of this we've had to somehow teach ourselves, what do these things mean? And we tend to just worry about the things that affect our lives or our family members' lives. And even though we might be New Zealanders and can come in on our New Zealand passport, many New Zealand families have family members that are not Australians, not New Zealanders, but they are from other countries. And those family members have to have a visa to be able to stay with them here in Australia. And that's not an easy feat. So, but there are ways that New Zealanders can help, both protected and non-protected. What they can do, what those two categories of New Zealanders can do, though, differs from each other. So, for example, if you're a protected SCV holder or eligible New Zealand citizen, you are able to sponsor your partner, for example, on a partner visa, provided you meet all the criteria, like they meet all the criteria. There's always a long list of criteria that you've got to go through, but generally speaking, you are able to be a sponsor. If you're not a protected SCV holder or not an eligible New Zealand citizen, you might be able to help your partner through what's called the subclass 461 visa pathway, along with children. So there are options. That visa is a temporary visa. All visas have 3 digits. If you see a visa starting with the number 4, like our visa, which is the 444 or the 444 visa, anyone starting with 4 is a temporary visa. Some temporary visas can go on to become permanent visas, like the 494 or the 491, that have a permanent visa after so many years you can apply for. But with the 444 and the 461, those ones can't. So anyway, that's just touching on that. But to go back to the understanding bridging visa, a bridging visa is a visa that's granted to somebody who has applied for what's called a substantive visa. So these are kind of technical terms, but they're important to understand. If you're one of those people trying to get your head around how this whole immigration stuff works, one of the first things that I had to learn when I started studying migration law and practice was that what a substantive visa was. And these are some funny words. Again, they don't come naturally. They're not everyday words that we use. But a substantive visa, in general terms, without getting too technical, is basically a visa that allows you to be in Australia that is not a bridging visa, or a couple of the other types of visas, but I'll just stick with that for now. So a bridging visa is, like the name suggests, it's a bridge between whatever status you are right now to the next visa. So if you're a New Zealander, for example, who's applied for the 189 visa, you would have been on a 444 visa first, Then you applied for the 189. You then got granted a bridging visa, and that bridging visa sits there until your 189 is granted. However, a bridging visa only comes into play when your original visa is no longer current, or for whatever reason it's ceased. So that's when a bridging visa. So for us New Zealanders, the tricky part is we've got this 444 visa. It just stays in place the whole time. Our bridging visas never actually ever, well, not that I've ever seen anyway, but they never kind of kick in. But the bridging visa's there as a backup to make sure that you stay lawful while your visa's being decided. And sometimes people can be on bridging visas for years and years and years, and that's because they're waiting for their visas to be decided. Sometimes their visa might get refused, so they appeal the decision. So they're waiting for the decision for the appeals process to be complete, and there's other processes that you can follow too. So that's what a bridging visa is. And the bridging visas here in Australia, they go in alphabetical order. So there's an A, B, C, D, E, and I think there's even an F and an R. So I don't know why it skips all that, but anyway, they all have different purposes. Probably the most common ones we see are bridging visa A's, B's, C's, and E's, not even D's. We've not had to deal with any D's, but those visas all have different purposes. Anyway, that's the bridging visa situation. If you're on a bridging visa E, or you apply for a bridging visa E, it means you're probably unlawful. That means your substantive visa has expired, or you've overstayed it. Something's happened, and you need an urgent bridging visa to allow you to be lawful, so that you don't get locked up in detention and kicked out of the country. So that's what bridging visa E does. And anyone can apply for a bridging visa E if they're in this situation, but sometimes that's not the best thing you do. You need to make sure, if you're in a situation where you're unlawful because, for example, you've overstayed a visa, get proper advice. Don't go to those illegal operators, because they'll just jump at the chance to give you a bridging visa E. It's quick money for them, it's easy, it's free, but that's not necessarily the best solution for you. But most definitely you have to get, well, it's better for you to get professional advice, so that there may be other things you can do immediately to help resolve your problem. So that's the bridging visa E. And I won't talk anymore about bridging visas, because I'm sure you've had enough of hearing about those, but yeah, there's different purposes for those. Now, if you don't know if, one, you hold a visa, or two, you don't know what visa you do hold, you're not sure, we actually do what's called Vivo checks. There's this thing called a Vivo check, which you may have heard of before, which lets you know what your visa status is. So what it is, it's you lodge an online application. Normally you fill out an online form to the Department of Home Affairs, and it'll come back telling you what your visa status is. Now, people are often asked for this if they're applying for certain types of work. Sometimes it needs to be provided for children if they're getting enrolled in schools and things like that. So a Vivo check is an important bit of information. And if you're not sure about your situation, we do free Vivo checks for New Zealand passport holders. And why do we just do it for New Zealand passport holders? It's because New Zealanders can't access a Vivo themselves easily. It's quite a complicated process, whereas other people who aren't New Zealand citizens in Australia can access their Vivo checks, usually with just their passport details. But New Zealanders have to get passwords and things from the department. So it's a bit of a hassle, but we do provide those free of charge. So if people want to find out what their visa status is, you can contact us. There is a link on our website, motungamigration.com.au. Look for the one that says, I think it's Book a Vivo or something like that, request a Vivo check, and we can help you with that. So there's a form there that you fill out. All right. In saying that though, I met with a woman this week who's been in Australia since 1979 and has never left Australia. So from New Zealand, and has never left Australia in her entire life. So if you have not left the country since 1990, is normally you can't get a VIVO check. So you're not even on the records that way. You are on records, but not through the VIVO system. We can't get it. So that's a bit different, that type of situation. But generally speaking, everyone else, we can. And if you're someone who hasn't left the country since, I think it's 1983, you might even be what's considered an absorbed person. So you might hold an absorbed person's visa, which does change if you're a New Zealand citizen, if you leave the country and then you come back in, because you end up on a 444 visa, which is the temporary visa. All right, 461 visas. I wanted to touch on that. I'll let you see if there's any other questions. How does sponsorship work? Oh, okay. Sponsorship works, Charmaine. Sponsorship, so there's different types of sponsorship. So you've got businesses, for example, that sponsor employees. And then you've got sponsorship where you've got partner visas. So you need someone to be able to sponsor you, or you've got child visas where you need a parent to be able to sponsor you. So how sponsorship works, first and foremost, is you have to be someone who is eligible to sponsor a non-citizen on a visa. And to be eligible, there is a list of criteria, but the most basic criteria is you either have to be an Australian citizen, recognised as an Australian permanent resident. And remember, for New Zealanders, it's not as easy as us just living here permanently. It's a special type of permanent resident. Or if you're a New Zealander, you have to be in that eligible New Zealand citizen category, or otherwise known as a protected SCV holder. If you've not heard of those terms before, I do talk about it on our website. So I've got a whole section on, what's an eligible New Zealand citizen and status of New Zealand citizens. It's really important. I think that's the starting point. If you're a New Zealand citizen and if you don't know anything about immigration, my advice is, if you're doing your own research, is go to the part that talks about your status first and foremost, because once you understand your status then helps you to understand what directions you either need to go or can go, and what options you have. So certain New Zealand citizens can also sponsor their partners and children. Other New Zealanders can also, the right word's not sponsor, you have to have a New Zealand citizen family member in order to qualify for the 461 visa. So that's a different category again. But generally speaking, you have to be an Australian citizen, permanent resident, or New Zealander that's been living in Australia before or on the 26th of February 2001, 2001. And there is a little grey area for the first 3 months after that change, that date, up to the 25th of May 2001, where you might be assessed as a protected SCV holder, therefore eligible to sponsor someone on a visa. So, and how sponsorship works is that if you've got a family member that can sponsor you, there's, like I was saying, there's more criteria that you have to check off. Once you go through all that, if you've got a green light, if you tick all the right boxes, then it's a matter of filling in forms. So sometimes forms have to be filled out on paper, so what we call hard copies or paper applications, which means you fill out actual paper, you put it in an envelope and you post it or courier it to the department. Or there's online applications. And sometimes some visas used to have both. You had the option to do one or the other. nowadays they tend to be moving towards one or the other. So it might be that this application can only ever be applied for online now, or only ever be applied for in paper form. So at the moment, partner visas are online, although in exceptional circumstances, you may need to do a paper application, and child visas are paper applications only. Subclass 461 visas are paper applications only. Problem with paper applications though is that you need to make sure you post it to the correct Department of Home Affairs address. And talking about the 461 visas, we've seen cases where people have been refused this visa because they posted it to the wrong Department of Home Affairs, and they send it back to you and they say no. And by the time they get it back and then send it to the right office, the correct address, it might be out of time. So in other words, their visa, their previous 461 might have expired. So this is normally in cases where people are renewing their 461 visas. Anyway, lots to think about. So sponsorship is, depends on a number of things like that. Okay, I hope that didn't confuse you anymore. Oh, kia ora, Deirdre. Are you back yet? A few of our clients have been over in New Zealand, spending time with whānau. All right, so I don't think there's any other questions. I'm just having to scroll. All right, now where are we? I must be just about finished. Gosh. Border visas. Now I have touched on this. This is a visa that we've never really talked about up until recently, but a border visa known as a subclass 773 or a transit visa is a visa that's been applied for and granted an immigration clearance. Now, this is important to understand, especially for New Zealand citizens, because you can get really, really blindsided in this type of situation, and you do get blindsided actually. So if you've ever heard of this type of visa or never heard of it, I'll tell you a little bit about it. I won't go too deep because it's always on and on and on. But basically, it's when a New Zealander comes into Australia, particularly the New Zealanders who maybe live in Australia, because every time we leave Australia, our 444 visa ceases, which means we don't actually have a visa to come back into the country. When we come into immigration clearance, so customs, where your passport might get checked, or you might have a border force officer check your details. If you don't meet what's called the behaviour concern non-citizen criteria, which is one of the criteria for New Zealand citizens, basically it's a character requirement. If you don't meet that requirement, you can be turned around and sent back to New Zealand, even if you live in Australia, even if you've been here for decades. So even if you own a business, own property, all your family are Australian citizens, those things don't actually matter when it comes to this type of stuff. So this is why it's so important to sort your immigration stuff out, particularly when you live in another country. And it does, I do worry when I see people saying immigration is not important, you don't need to do anything, you're fine, just don't break the law, those types of things. It's a lot more complicated than that. And so when you come in, if you don't get issued a 444 visa again, which is normally an automatic process, because you either might not have met the behaviour concern non-citizen criteria, or there's a health concern non-citizen criteria too. But if something goes wrong at that point, you might be told by customs officers or border force that you can try applying for a border visa. Now, they're not obliged to tell you this. If you don't know it and miss the opportunity, that's on you. They don't need to tell you, but sometimes they do. Sometimes they can be helpful. So not everybody qualifies for a border visa though. you qualify for a border visa usually if you are someone who used to be a permanent resident of Australia. In New Zealanders' cases, it's if you lived here before 94, September 94, or if your partner or children are Australian citizens, well, mainly partner, and if you're the child, if you're under 18 and don't meet this criteria, if you're the child of someone who's a citizen or permanent resident, then there's allowances there. Not that that would happen, I don't know how many times that might happen, but generally speaking, you're given this visa. The visa is granted usually for 30 days, for a month, where you're allowed to come into the country. You either got to pack your stuff up and leave before that month is up, and when I say leave, leave. You can't carry on staying in Australia, or you apply for a visa in that time. Now, this is high stakes stuff, really, really high stakes stuff. And there's not enough information out there to forewarn us or educate us about this type of situation. So I am mentioning this now on a regular basis. So in the hope that whoever might need to hear this message will hear it. And generally speaking, you don't want to find yourself in that situation. The way to avoid that situation is to get advice in the first place, get your affairs in order so that you don't get blindsided. We don't have crystal balls. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. And when it comes to immigration, you know, we see so many sad and devastating cases, but a lot of the time, to be honest, they could have been avoided if people had done the right thing, got the right advice, got the right help, applied for visas or citizenship at the very least, or at least being aware of what the processes are so that they would be better equipped if they were going to leave Australia and try and come back in. So that's all I'll say about that one. We have a free callback service. So if you don't know already, if you want to engage our services, you want to talk to us personally about your situation, you don't want to put it on Facebook or anywhere, you can contact us and we can offer a free 10-minute callback. So there's a booking calendar on our website. Feel free to go, and if we do, that's restricted to in Australia calls. And yeah, anyway, go there. It gives you all the information. And if you are someone who wants to just get proper advice for your situation, so that a callback is good for general information, if you just want us to point you in the right direction, we can't give you specialist advice at that time, because to give specialist advice, we have to do a formal assessment. Assessments take quite a bit of time. We normally do assessments in a consultation process. So you have to book in a consultation, that's an hour. And what we do is we'll go through your whole situation. We'll work out what your situation is overall, what your options are, what our recommendations are, what might be available to you, whether it's visas or citizenship, and what types of visas and what types of citizenship might be available to you. We also weigh up the risks. We'll let you know what we think are the risks for your type of application, or if we think that is very low risk. Yeah, that's what the consultation does. So there is a fee for the consultation. If you're a complex case, so a complex case might be someone who's had a visa refused, dealing with AAT, they might have certain conditions on their visas. There's a whole list anyway on our website. Those types of cases do take a lot more of our time, so they cost more to do those types of consultations. But it's all there, all the prices and everything. And I'm just having a look. I think I saw another question pop up. Sia, Angie, what if you're 60 plus and want to get citizenship as PR, also been here since 95? Okay, Angie, that's great. So if you've been here since 95, I'm assuming that you were here between 99 and 2001, because those are the key dates that you have to have been in Australia. So there's criteria around that. But if you meet that criteria, you can apply for citizenship directly without needing to apply for a permanent visa first, which is good news because it saves money and saves time. And I'm just opening it up. What if you're 60 plus and want to get citizenship as a permanent resident. If you're 60 plus, it's even better because you don't have to go and do the test. So hopefully that's good news. Good news. Most 60 plus year olds telling me, oh, that's the first time I've been happy to be over 60. I don't have to go and do this exam. So yes, definitely if you meet those criteria, obviously there's other things we need to look at. So the woman I mentioned earlier that's been here since 1979, her case is actually quite a complex case. So it's not straightforward, even though she's been here all that time. In fact, what I find is that these cases where people have been here and it's historical, they can actually turn up more complex issues than someone who's been here, say, since 2000. So it's really important to get a consultation, book in a consultation. At least at that point, you'll know what direction you need to go in and what you need to look out for. So yeah, in her case, she's got quite a number of complexities involved in her case. She's mortified and shocked that she never knew that she actually thought that they were citizens because their dad did citizenship years ago. And sometimes parents didn't include their children, either because their children might have been over 18 at the time when they did theirs, or they didn't think to include them. I don't know why, don't ask me why, but anyway, it's not uncommon for that to happen. Sadly, one of her family members has recently been deported from Australia, and it was only through that experience that it became apparent to her and their other family members how serious and important it is to sort out your immigration stuff. And so they've been hugely blindsided by how the laws work. And yeah, just something to think about. Oh, good morning, Leah. Hope you're well. And Angie, okay, right, now come back to yours. Where are we? Also been here. My mum hasn't got a birth certificate or parents' name on birth certificate. I'd have to look at the situation, Angie. That can be problematic when identity documents aren't complete. But in those types of situations, we'll look at that. We'll look at what's going on, and we do understand how documents are formed and how New Zealand operates, especially. So we should, well, we can guide you through how to deal with those types of issues. So hopefully that kind of helps. It is hard to give advice when we only know little bits and pieces, which is why the consultation is so important, because then we can really dig deep and get all the information that we need to be able to provide you with the right advice. And look, getting citizenship just helps to secure you no matter what happens. Remember, immigration is influenced 99.9% of the time by politics. Okay, and I know a lot of people aren't interested in politics, but that kind of makes it more dangerous for you. If you don't take an active interest, you generally don't know how immigration will work for you. And you may not even be aware that there are things to look out for that could put you or your family at risk. And, I've dealt with literally thousands of cases now of families who are affected by visa cancellation situations, and it does blindside you. No matter how prepared you think you are, it does blindside you. And I know that some people are afraid to even look at applying for a visa or citizenship if they're eligible, because they might have convictions and they're really worried about that. Again, it's best to have, come and talk to us, have an assessment so we can look at all of your details closely. We don't go and report all of that to the department. That's not our role. Our role is to support individuals and families with their immigration needs. So visas, citizenship, complex matters, representation at the AAT, so that's the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, doing submissions, fixing messes. We do a lot of that, but our job, we are not obliged to go and report people to the department. So sometimes people think that that's part of our role, that we have to do that, but that's not true at all. But yeah, it does pay to get a proper assessment and talk to someone. I think that's it. I can't believe I've talked for just over an hour. How's that? Oh no, hour. Oh yeah, over an hour. Yeah, so the callbacks, and of course there's our website too. So our website's got lots of information, lots of links there to help give you some more information. If you want to check us out further, you can. We believe that if you want to get proper advice, it always is good if you can see the person's face, hear their voice, see what they're about, see what their credentials are, be able to check them out, be able to verify that this person is who they say they are. They do have the qualifications they say they have, and that's a big reason we do the lives. So that people can see our mugs and hear us. We are real people, and that's not something that's so easily transparent we see in the industry across the board. So it's a bit unique, but we know our communities, we know our people, we know what we're like, and we know that we like to, at very best, what we call kanohi ki te kanohi, eye to eye, see the person, look them in the eye. Are they honest? Are they trustworthy? Are they reliable? Are they professional? What experience do they have? Do they know what they're talking about, etc., etc.? So that type of stuff. And, we really want to help people understand the importance, because we don't want you coming to us or someone else, saying, oh my God, this has happened. And, that's when you get to that point, that's a big problem. And big problems cost lots more money. They're a lot more stressful, and they also have a lot less chance of success. So you want to try and deal with the stuff early. Don't listen to people who say it's not important, because they're not the ones that have to live your life, and they don't have to live with the consequences of what happens if something goes wrong for you. You're the one that has to live with that. So we strongly, strongly, strongly encourage our people. If you think we're just doing this for business, go somewhere else. Don't come to us. Go and get advice. Go and get help from another migration agent. We don't do this for that reason. We do this because we've seen the disasters and the messes for years now, years and years. And we love our people, and we love our communities, and we just want to be able to give our time freely every week. So anyway, on that note, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. I look forward to my buddy Kathleen coming back, so I don't have to do all of the talking by myself. And I hope that, whatever you decide to do, we wish you nothing but well in your journey. And we really want we want to see the best for you. So our area of expertise is immigration, and we want to be able to provide an environment, a safe environment where people can discuss these situations with us, with absolute confidentiality, privacy. I don't share a lot of our clients' details. I wish I could sometimes, because I think it would really demonstrate all of the different types of situations of what we see, and why we feel so passionate about what we do, because we know it's real. It's a real problem, and it's not going to go away, even with a really lovely government that's being nice to us at the moment. And I hope it's going to be for a long time, but like I said, it's political, so things can change. So I'm really, really hoping that our communities, our New Zealanders, especially the New Zealand citizens and their families, are going to have a golden opportunity. It'll be the first time in over 20 years that we can actually have, pretty much guaranteed pathway, which has just not happened. So I hope people don't turn their noses up at that opportunity, because it's taken a long time to really fight to be heard. And a lot of people have had to speak out over the years over what's happened in their lives, and advocating and pushing for change. It's been a long, hard road. But anyway, I hope you all have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you back here next Friday. Okay, I'll just do one more quick check. No more question. Angie, thank you so much. Even though you're doing a wonderful job. Thank you, Angie. Yes, we've tried to find them, but can't find stuff all the way back in. Yeah, well, yeah, probably best to book in a time and talk with us, Angie, and then we'll go through all of that and work out a plan. Okay. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.